Now in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to build a little fence and a gate. Now the first thing will be to measure the width of the gate and then dig the holes. So here I'm showing you a close-up on the holes. It should be 600 deep. You can see there's one hole that's been dug, and here we've got another hole that has been dug. Now we're going to drop the poles. Right, so now we're on to phase 2. The holes have been dug. We have now inserted the uprights. These are called 760 by 760. I use 2mm thick steel. It's a bit stronger, better for welding. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. 760 by 760, and the thickness, if you had to measure through the steel, is 2mm. Now what we're going to do is we are going to put concrete. We're going to line them straight, and then we are going to let them dry for 48 hours. The mixing of the concrete, what you'll require is river sand with stone. That together is often called crusher. So it's the stuff that you will build a foundation with. It's almost like a coarse sand with some 10mm or even bigger 15 or 25mm stones. Sometimes the merchants, the building suppliers, sell them separately. They'll sell you the sand and the stone individually. If you look at the left hand side of the picture, you will see I have some stones there. That stone is also fine. What is also a good idea is when you are putting in the pole, it's a good idea that the bottom of the pole is not immersed in the concrete. And the reason why that is because sometimes when it rains, water might get in the top of the pole, especially if there's a time gap between the time you put the cap on the top of the pole, and you will see all of this in the video. Some water might get in there, and it's actually blocked by the concrete at the bottom of the hole. Okay, so for the second upright, now we do the same process as I said. First put the pole in, don't put the pole in the concrete, put the pole into the sand and the concrete around the pole. So if any water gets into the pole, into the shaft, it can actually go into the sand and it doesn't start to rust the pole. Okay, we use some wood just to compress that concrete mix. As I said, we do put some stones in as well and fill it up, make it neat. Remember to clean the bricks, your paving, because concrete does stain. It leaves a hard residue the next day, so it's a good idea to clean up afterwards. And then after you've put the concrete in, align the poles, get it as straight as possible. Now some tips to get the poles perfectly vertical. Measure between the two poles at the bottom. Measure at the top to check. Use a spirit level. Use the spirit level on many sides of the pole. As you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be measuring the left to right alignment so that the pole is straight, and also the front to back, because the pole has to be measured so that it's straight left to right and front to back. Is it leaning forward? Is it leaning back? Is it leaning to the left? Is it leaning to the right? And when you fix maybe the front to back, you might be offsetting the left to right. And that is why you got to keep going round the pole to check that the spirit level is giving you the correct measurement. And then go back to make sure both poles are done. Also do this after 45 minutes as well. It does move. The pole might move after a bit of time. And why? The sun. Also, someone might walk past and bump it, and you don't want to have to straighten this thing once the concrete is dry. It's a hell of a job, that. Right, now leave it for, I believe, 2 days. So that's 48 hours. In my case, it was left for longer than that. And what you're seeing now is the building of the gate. So what we have there, the red fence there, is a standard universal piece of palisade fencing, and it happens to be 3 meters wide. So what I'm doing now is I'm measuring the width of this section of this little gate that we're building, so that we're going to go and cut that universal red palisade so that we can weld it into this space. But keep in mind that the cutting does take a little bit off, so you want to make sure that you accommodate the blade thickness when you're cutting. So for example, if the thick width is 1.2 meters, make sure that when you mark it off on the palisade, that maybe you make it 1.202 for the thickness of the blade. Otherwise you're going to have to build up the weld. Alright, so we're going to probably cut this now. Okay, now we're fitting it, we're checking that the width was correct, and now it's time to look at the second part, which actually forms the gate section of this little fence that we're building. Right, so now one's got to measure the width. How wide is this gate going to be? And remember that when you buy the palisade, it's not strong enough to become a gate as is. You need to actually build it by providing a frame. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to just measure it, and then I'm going to cut the steel that's lying on the floor into lengths that I'm going to weld into a frame, a rectangular frame. See, there we go. I'm now putting the cut pieces and seeing if it can fit in the palisade fence. So what you're going to see is the pieces. There we go, there's the one piece. Now I'm going to cut another one, and then there's got to be two going across. Then I'm going to make a frame. Once the frame is built, I'm then going to weld it onto the palisade, and that will give the gate rigidity. If this doesn't make sense, you will see as we go along how the rectangular frame provides the rigidity. If you don't have it, the fence cannot be have the function of a gate, because it will kind of wobble. Okay, now the gate has to close onto something. And I realized that we need a piece of steel against the wall here, the brick wall. So this is kind of a steel shaft that I'm going to screw into the wall using roll bolts. It's got to be measured, and just deciding on the way that it's going to be. And you'll see now how we deal with this part of the gate. Now what I've done is I have marked off in equidistant points the places where I'm going to install the roll bolt, and I'm just going to drill it into the wall now. So you can see that's the upright. So that's going to be where the gate closes. Right, now what I'm using are these loops, or these little punched little loop plates. And what it is, it's got a hole where the roll bolt will go through. And what I need to do is weld this little plate onto this upright, which I've just got painted. And the reason why we painted or put the primer on now is because this thing is going to be facing the brick. Now you can't paint the back of it, and you don't want rust dripping down always on the bricks. You're always going to see a dirty rust residue on the bricks when it rains. So that's why the steel is now green, because it's primed. And I primed it for the reason that, as I've just said, that we can't paint the back of the steel while it's on the wall. So we just painted it now. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm just welding these little loops on, and then I'm going to put the raw bolts through these pins, and these little plates, and then I'm going to put it onto the wall. I'm going to fix it onto the wall. So what you're going to see now is I'm just welding it on. I've measured them. I know where the plates are supposed to go. When you weld, it's very important to check your weld, hammer it, check that the weld actually took. It actually welded the one metal to the other, and the way to do that is actually just to hammer away the flux or the residue, and don't make holes in the steel like I just did there. Sorry, I wasn't concentrating, but it is going to be painted and primed, and I'm going to re-weld that. I'm going to cover that hole just now. I'm now just measuring that each one of those little lips is going to be the same, so that the pole is going to be standing straight. So I just made sure that the amount of the loop part is going to be the same for each one. I didn't mention the safety aspects. Or if you are going to be doing this, remember, wear protective gear, cover your hands, cover your eyes, wear ear protection for the noise. You might see me grinding without eye protection. I do wear glasses. I have been working with tools for a long time, but that's no excuse. You should always cover your face, eyes, and hands. And also make sure that somebody knows you always, what I mean is always work in groups of 2 at least. So that if an accident does happen, there's always someone there to help you. And this is even for people who do this every day. It's not good to get slapdash and actually not take and not attend to the safety aspects. And I say this and I mean it. I'm an electrical engineer, and I realized that when I stopped caring for electricity is when I had the most accidents. You get overconfident, and then there you start getting electric shocks and so forth. So safety number 1. Right, once you've completed the welding, and obviously each gate is different. As you can see, this wall and this gap makes for a kind of angular system here. You're going to see when it's on the wall, it's not in the same plane as the other pole. So you're going to see how I dealt with that closer to the time. I'm just putting in the bolts now. I'm going to tighten them, and they were painted again so that the paint doesn't run down, the rust doesn't run down the wall. That now you can see why we painted that with the primer, the green primer, before we actually put the upright, because you can't paint behind the wall. And then especially if you were doing this on a wall that wasn't face brick. Look, the face brick's not going to show the rust that much, but when it drips down on the paving, you're going to see like a dirty line of like dark discoloring of the brick, and you don't want that. So that's why I did do the painting first. All right, so we're just tightening it. We're fixing this steel onto the wall. Just keep in mind that when you are drilling into a corner of a wall, try bring it in at least like 8 centimeters, because you don't want to split the brick, and that's very important, especially when you're dealing in corners of walls and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why I've put the raw bolts on the right hand side here, because if I put it on the other side, it literally would just split the bricks. And then it's pretty strong now, and all it's really all this thing is really offering is the place where the gate's going to close, and it'll allow me to lock it into this this now nice green upright. All right, now the next step is to actually build the frame. We're going to now weld the frame and get the frame ready, because the gate portion, as I said, needs a frame. And what we're going to do is now we're going to measure it. We're going to see how wide is this gate going to be. Remember, it's not a gate yet. It only becomes a gate once there are hinges on there and a latch and a frame. So what we're doing now, we've just measured it. We're now going to cut it a little bit shorter, build the frame to give it that support, and that's what you're going to see. I'll speed up the video even faster. Okay, so to get this frame right, my advice is try work on a level surface. Next thing is, don't weld the corner completely. Just do what you call tacking. It just means that you've done 1 or 2 welds, just bzzzt, bzzzt, just so that the frame is holding holding itself together. So there's a few reasons for this. The first one is inevitable, it will be a little bit skew. It's inevitable. The second thing is, as you weld, the heat of the metal, when it contracts and then relaxes, actually changes the shape. So you might find that it curves a little bit. So you got to tack it, tack the other side, tack. And when I say tack, it means just do like a spot weld. So you got to tack it, tack the other side, tack it, tack it. Once it's all been held together by just like very small dot, like spot welds, then you measure it again, make sure that it's still straight, and then you build up the welds each side completely. You'll weld along all the seams to make sure that it's going to be really strong. One way that allows you to get the right angles correct is to use a right angle triangle. So what you will see on the floor by my foot is this right angle triangle. There you see that right angle ruler, and what it does is it allows you to make sure you get a 90-degree fit. And here you can see we've measured it. Now I'm just doing the spot weld, then I'll measure the other side, do the spot weld, turn it, measure the other side, do the spot weld, rotate it, and so forth. Now, people often forget that being straight doesn't only mean straight in the horizontal platform, it also means straight in the vertical platform, which means that you want the frame to stand straight in the same way like I was showing you with the uprights. You've got to measure the straightness going left and right, and also the straightness going forward and back. Okay, once you've done all the welding, just go with a grinder just to clean it up, to flatten it, to make it smooth, because remember, we're going to squash this into the remainder of the palisade fence. So you're going to see now how we're going to squash it in there. And you don't want these burrs and so forth. You don't want these rough edges stopping the nice flush fitting of this frame. So we're going to clean it up now, and then just check it one more time, and then place it into the palisade fence. A quick way to check that you have done your welding accurately, and that your frame is perfect rectangular, rectangle is measure corner, diagonal corner to diagonal corner. And that will tell you very quickly if your welds have been good and your frame is straight. Now what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to fit it in the remainder of the fence, which is actually going to become the gate. Okay, so we're just cutting off the edges of the palisade, and there was a bit of a lip there, so we're cutting it off so that once we put the frame in, the frame is the part that's going to be sticking out and not the edges of the angle iron. Now you can see how nicely that frame is sitting in there. Might have to tap it in. I think if I recall, we did tap it in. It was quite a close fit. And what we need to do now is just measure the width and cut off the remainder of the gate, remainder of the palisade section that we don't need. So we're just taking a measurement now, and then we're going to cut it off. And what will be left will be a piece of palisade fence, a frame, and ready to be made into the gate, as I said. So now we're just cutting off the part we don't need. Just measuring it, making sure where the cutting needs to take place. Right, now we are ready to weld this frame into the palisade section, and it's looking more and more like a gate. The frame is going to give it that rigidity. The metal we used, I can't recall, but it is rectangular tubing. I think it was 34. Yeah, I think I can't really recall, so I don't want to say, but it's about it's more than an inch thick. Right, now we are welding the frame into the palisade section in as many places as possible so that the frame is making a really snug fit and a welded fit. So it is now fused to the palisade section in several places, and going to turn it around and weld it from the front, from the back, on the side, several places. And as you can see, welding the corners. Now, just a note, because this is going to be the front of the gate, you don't want to ruin the aesthetic of the gate. So just be cognizant that this is going to be the front. So you want, when you do make the welds, you want to make them at correct intervals so that it doesn't look like you just welded at any old position. You want to make it that at least if you were welding in the middle, that it was half, equidistant from the left and the right side. So at least it looks neat. And I'm going to sand them down afterwards. Another aspect is when a gate slams, it does that vibration can break off a poor weld, and that is why it's important to check your welds afterwards and make sure that they actually were making good contact, or sorry, that they did make a good fuse. The metals did fuse together well, and that's why you've got to hammer them afterwards and also check that they are good. Okay, so now once the frame is done, we move to putting on the hinges. Now this is quite a challenging step because you've got to be aware of a few things. The first thing is the gate. You've got to decide, is the gate opening or closing? Now we've designed the gate that it's opening towards us, towards the camera. So what you've got to be aware of is that the slope of the ground does not interfere with the opening of the gate. For example, if the ground was elevating and then the gate was opening, well, then you would have to keep a space from the bottom of the gate to the floor. And as you can see, there's a piece of brandering wood, which is just a thin piece of wood, and what that is providing us with like a 35 millimeter gap. So when the gate opens, it does not scratch or scrape on the paving, which is actually going at a bit of an incline. Now what I'm doing now is I'm measuring the exact positions for the hinges. And also when you are doing the hinges, you've also got to note, is it opening outward or is it going to be opening inward? So these are the things you've got to think about. Hinges start with a spot weld, and the reason for that is you're going to spot weld the hinge on, and then you're going to put the gate there. You're going to make sure that it opens the way you want it and it closes the way you want it. Then after that, go and do your heavy welding and making sure that it's affixed properly. Okay, so it's top and bottom. 2 hinges is sufficient. These hinges are heavy duty hinges. Are now fitting the gate. We want to see that the gate is actually going to fit correctly. And now we also want to know where on this frame, remember we're welding the hinge onto the frame. So we want to know where on this frame are we going to be welding, and that's why we are now measuring that. And also we are actually opening the gate now to also see that the gate, when it is in the open position, is not scratching on the floor. Now some people like to have the gate automatically close. That means that without a door closer, the gate is at a slight angle, so when you open it, it closes by itself, and some people don't like that feature. So just be aware that whoever you're building the gate for, maybe it's yourself, you can make the gate automatically close without an automatic door closer by the way you align those hinges. If you align it at a slight angle, the gate will actually close when it's up to 85 degrees. All right, so now you're seeing the inside here. Getting ready to weld it. And you can see the use of the spirit level. It's very important here. That'll also tell you if the gate is going to be swinging open or swinging closed. Maybe the weld wasn't done, the hinge wasn't installed straight. Now this part is probably the trickiest part of the whole job, and it is a 2-man job. Although I have done it by myself, you'll need a lot of bricks and so forth, but the best way is to just get someone to hold it in place. So you need someone to hold the gate, firstly so that the gate does not go out of horizontal alignment, and also secondly so that when you do weld it, it doesn't move. And first do the spot welds, and just really to fasten the hinge to the steel, and then I'll do the bottom, and I'm not going to do the complete weld. As you can see, I've just made a few spots there, and I'm doing the bottom. And as I said, the reason for this is it's often mistakes happen, and secondly, you might want to just bend it a little bit. These spot welds allow you to bend the gate a little bit if you need to. So now I'm going to check it. Now I'm going to start actually doing the final weld. And then very important is each time, open and close the gate, weld a bit, open and close the gate. Make sure that the hinge hasn't shifted, or when the hinge heats up and cools down, it hasn't shifted, and that the gate is still opening and closing in the way that you intended. And just cleaning up afterwards, going with the grinder, just cleaning the area, because if you've got a lot of if you've built up the hinge too much with your welding, then when the gate closes, you're going to find that it's actually not allowing the gate to close fully, because now there's a gap between the one side of the hinge and the other side of the hinge. So that's why it's important to keep it flat. And there I'm just checking that now. You can see how the upright pole is moving a little bit, so it does need to be cleaned out and that was the reason for why I was doing the cleaning out the, well, grinding the hinge a little bit. Right, now the next step is to just weld the next section of this little fence that we're building. Okay, in order to get the level straight, I use some fish wire. That's the yellow plastic wire, nylon wire that you're seeing from the left to the right, so that the line of the gate and the line of the palisade section are actually level. They share the same horizontal plane. So what I'm doing is I'm using a longer spirit level. I'm checking that this is correct. Now my partner is actually going to lift it up, and I'm going to weld this last piece between the two uprights, and that brings us to kind of the end of the gate. Although in later part of the video I do show you how to put to make it pet friendly so dogs can't jump through. Right, so I'm going to just speed up, skip ahead. Right, so now keeping the same line might require you to lift the gate. So you can see there's that brandering wood. We're just lifting it up to make sure that when we do the weld that the palisade is not resting on the floor. I went for almost like a 35mm gap from the floor to the beginning of the gate, and now it's time to weld it in place. It does require some fitting. You might need to grind a bit, weld, grind, or actually, to get this exactly fitted here is also a bit challenging. You might also need to build up the weld, but the most important thing is don't cut too much. The minute you cut too much, you're going to have to start building it up or adding a little extension piece. So my advice is grind it a little bit, try and squeeze the palisade section between the poles. I probably didn't show it, but we did. This part does take a bit of time. It's not as quick as it seems here. We did fit this thing several times, grind it a little bit, still too wide. You can see me, I'm doing the grinding there, pulling it out, grinding, putting it back, grinding. And also there's no problem using a hammer. You can actually just whack it in. It's not a problem. A tight fit is also good. Don't want to whack it too hard, because then you might take the uprights out of their alignment. Okay, so now grinding, fitting, grinding, fitting, and then comes the welding. Okay, so welding it in now. Once it's welded, we're going to cut the uprights. Right now I think they're like 2.6 meters, and the gate I think is only 2.2 meters high. So what you're going to do is you're just going to weld and then cut the uprights, put the end caps on, and you'll see that shortly. Okay, be aware that when you are cutting, you got to cut straight. It's quite hard to maintain a straight cut while it's above you. You can use a ladder if you've got the space. So there you go, cutting the end caps off. I mean the upright poles shorter, and then we're going to put weld on the end caps. I don't think I had them here. I think towards the end of the video I will show you the end caps. Okay, the priming, we're just doing the priming. My partner is now just doing the priming. This is a paint that stops it from rusting. It is not good to just put paint straight onto the raw metal. It's good to use a primer first. My experience is there are 2-in-1s that are primer and paint. My experience is nothing beats a good quality primer. You could even use it as a final coat for months even. So what I'm doing is what I'm doing now, you can see me, is I'm just straightening these palisades. I think they got bent, and then my partner is just doing the priming, giving it a rich coat, especially on the welds. And I don't know if you notice on the gate there's a little almost like a latch, well, like a lip that is welded onto the end. And as you can see, when I close the gate, that little latch is going to stop it from actually moving through. And then I still have to put a through bolt lock, which I haven't done yet. I still have to go and just get that. Okay, so you could just paint it, and that would be the gate is complete. But in this case, I needed to make it pet friendly. After the fact, I was aware of a dog, so now you can see we've got these metal. What they are is they're actually palisades, individual palisades that we cut into equal distances, and we have installed these by welding them in the middle between two palisades. So this makes it pet friendly. And why I say pet friendly is it's actually maybe not pet friendly, maybe pet resistant. So the pet, your little doggy, can't jump through the gap. So these little insets need to be welded and then obviously repainted. So this was an add-on. I only realized after the fact. But what I'm doing here is I'm just welding them in. It's important to get them straight. That's why I've got the fish tape. If you see it by my head, I've got that yellow line, and that allows it to be straight. And you got to weld them one by one. It's quite a time-consuming thing, and that's you'll see now. We're gonna just finish with that, and then I'll also put the lock on, and you'll see the finished product. What I would like to highlight is the end caps. I don't know if you can see on top of the uprights, you'll see the little caps. That stops the rainwater from getting into the pole, and then even on all three of them have an end cap. And then just remember to do the grinding to take away the rough areas. Also inspect the weld. So we just clean up afterwards. And now I'm going to install the little through bolt lock. Okay, so now just some pictures of the final product. If you're seeing a skew wall on the left there, yes, the wall is leaning. It has to be rebuilt. That's not a skew fence. It's a skew wall. The upright is actually straight. It's just the view of the camera. You'll see when I stand at a better angle and not leaning the camera, then it will show you that it is actually straight. We're now going to have a look. Also notice the end caps are on top there. I'm now going to have a look at the upright here by the gate, where the gate actually fastens. There's the inside, there's the through bolt padlock welded on and just painted. You can screw that on. I used the painting option. And then we're going to have another look here from the gate from a distance. It's coming up now. There we go. It is straight. It's just the picture, it's quite difficult to show it with the camera. For some reason, it doesn't. Depends. You've got to stand kind of in the middle. But anyway, that's the outcome of this gate. That's what it looks like. That's the on the inside of the gate. That's what it looks like. You can see the insets. And then lastly, this is the from the front again, just trying to get it straight, and that's it. So I hope this video has been informative. You can do a gate by yourself. What I mean is you can do it a DIY. Take 2 days maybe if you're not experienced, and it is possible to do it yourself. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been informative. Cheers.